Krajem rujna 2019. u Puli je održana 16. Konferencija Međunarodne udruge za svjetlost. Početak 21. stoljeća općenito je donio nove proboje na području razumijevanja utjecaja svjetlosti na živa bića, a sve ono što su prije ljudi razumijevali intuitivno počelo je dobivati znanstvene potvrde. Negdje na početku milenija nastala je i ILA, International Light Association, koja je ove godine skupila preko 20 govornika iz najrazličitijih područja. Svima njima zajednički nazivnik bio je svjetlost. Na svjetlost ćemo novu svjetlost baciti ovdje, na rubu znanosti.
So ILA is the International Light Association, and we are a very diverse group of experts on the field of light and color. We have our members and also our speakers are scientists, medical doctors, therapists, light and color practitioners, but also designers, architects, people who are personally interested. And our group is fascinating because we have as well on one side researchers and scientists, as well as on the other side therapists, practitioners and very spiritual people. So ILA was founded around 2002, and it has been founded in Brussels. And the logo of the ILA also represents a wonderful window of the Rubens house, a full stained glass window, the place where it has been founded. And our founding fathers have had the idea of building a very diverse group of experts dedicated to light and color, and to build up something like a light family, an international light family. And we are now at our 16th conference. Every year we are doing another conference on another part of the world, another city of the world. And here we are now in Pula for the first time in Croatia.
Ovo je međunarodna udruga koja okuplja terapeute, umjetnike, fizičare, znanstvenike, ljubitelje, zanesenjake u svjetlo, u boju i povećanje uloge svjetla i boje u svakodnevnom životu. Na konferenciji je oko 150 sudionika koji su došli iz oko 30 zemalja svijeta. Sudionika iz Hrvatske baš i nema jako puno. Što nam je žao, ali nadamo se da će u budućnosti biti bolje. Govornici su ih iz otprilike 10 zemalja i oni su objavili svoje radove u ovom zborniku. Inače izdajemo zbornike nakon svake godišnje konferencije, a ovo je prvo tiskano izdanje. Do sada smo imali online izdanja. Od hrvatskih sudionika konferencije spomenuo bih našeg poznatog arhitekta i majstora iluminacije Dejana Skiru, koji je osvijetlio mnoge lokalitete u Zagrebu i u Puli. Poznat je i u svijetu. Od nedavnih uspjeha može se istaći njegovo osvjetljenje nebodera u Moskvi koji pripada Gazprom njeftu. I moju malenkost koju sam dobio kredit, tek trebam predstaviti jednu svoju novu metodu ispravljanja kratkovidnosti.
The sensora deals more precisely with one area that's called chromotherapy, which means therapy through colors.
Andy Martel dolazi iz Kanade. On je ovdje predstavio svoj sustav senzora. Znači, to je jedna cijela soba koja je posvećena tom sustavu senzora. Unutra su stolice kao u nekom malom kinu. Ljudi sjede, gledaju i slušaju, opuštaju se.
So it's generating very pure colors. And it's doing it on a very large screen that covers the field of vision of the viewer. So it's like a 2-3 meters large screen. So it's an installation actually that fills the whole room. So the person is lying under that screen and there's a special projector creating patterns of very pure colors on the screen. And it's designed in such a way that it pretty much covers your field of view. So you're basically immersed in this field of very pure colors. And there's a special technology that I developed that I call light modulation, where I embed within the light, within the colors, low frequency pulsations, gentle variations in the light. And when you work with low frequency pulsations, you enter a whole world of entrainment of different biorhythms through resonance. There's a natural tendency when you're exposed to a stimulus that has the same frequency of one of your own biorhythms to enter in resonance with it. So you can see this with brainwaves, for example. If you have a stimulus, either of a sound or of a light, that's pulsing at a frequency that's in the range of your brainwaves, there will be a natural tendency of your brain to fall in sync with that stimulus. And when we know that each band of frequency of brainwaves correspond to specific mental states, then you see that you have a way through this sensory stimulus to help bring your brain towards a certain mental state. Well, light has always been used for healing, as you just mentioned, since past civilizations. But there's been an acceleration in the exploration of it, especially from the 19th century on to today. So at that time, there started to be scientists exploring more direct ways to manipulate light and to use it for healing. And actually, at the beginning of the 20th century was pretty much a peak in the interest of light for medicine. So light was very respectable in the medical field at that time. And that changed around the 1920s, 30s. There was a shift to the pharmaceutical approach to medicine with the discovery of antibiotics and so on. And these more softer techniques using light or other alternative approaches got really sidelined by this new direction of medicine. And so for the rest of the 20th century, working with light was actually not considered scientific at all. It was considered as quackery and not respectable. No scientist wanted to touch light therapy for quite a while towards the end of the 20th century. But fortunately, things changed again because at the end of the 20th century and the early 21st century, there were major discoveries that revealed in much more detail the profound effect that light has on our health, both on our body and our mind as well. And these discoveries really changed the whole outlook. Now it's, since 10 or 20 years, light medicine has become again a major field of exploration. There are thousands of researchers now exploring various approaches of using light for healing, and it's become respectable again in the world of medicine. We see the world through the eyes, and it has, of course, the most important impact on our mind and body. So that's the first pathway that everybody knows. There's another pathway that's just been discovered less than 20 years ago, and it's called the non-visual optic pathway. And it's a link in the optic nerve between the retina, the eye, and the core of the brain, the hypothalamus. And it's the region of the brain that regulates all our hormone, our inner balance, our inner clock. It's all controlled by the hypothalamus and the major glands that are connected to it, the pineal gland and so on. So there's this direct link between vision, the retina, and the hypothalamus. And once this was discovered, it really made people aware of the powerful influence of light on our whole inner balance. So that's the second very important pathway of light. And the third one is simply the effect it has on our cells, on our skin. For a long time it was thought that we are not plants, we don't absorb light like plants do, but actually it was found out towards the end of the 20th century that we do absorb light and that it does affect cellular metabolism in important ways. That's the pathway called now photobiomodulation, which is modulating, controlling biology through light, photobiomodulation. And so there's a whole range of techniques using that where you apply light, certain frequencies of light on the skin or deeper in the body to help heal many things. It accelerates cellular metabolisms and helps healing. So these three very different ways of using light to touch different parts of our being. Well, there's branches of light medicine involving photobiomodulation. So this is using mostly deep red and near-infrared colors of light. So you'll see devices that are used for all kinds of treatments for wounds or to heal joints or to heal skin. You see it in beauty treatments nowadays. It's becoming more and more common where you'll use light to improve skin tone and so on. So this is one branch of phototherapy to work directly with cellular metabolism. Then you have a whole other branch that's known as bright light therapy, which is using bright light sources to influence our inner clock, our circadian rhythm, because it's becoming more and more obvious that many pathologies are related to the fact that our inner clock, especially in Western countries, in the northern part of the world, we're becoming disconnected from the daily cycle of light. We don't absorb enough light. We live indoors, we have artificial light sources. So in some ways, when even on a small level our inner clock becomes disconnected from the daily cycle, it has deep consequences on our health. It's not, in the beginning it doesn't do much, but if you keep doing that long term over years, it actually can lead to things like some forms of cancer, depressions and so on. So there's all kinds of negative effects from this lack of bright light. And then you have medical applications, for example, techniques like photodynamic therapy, where you will use certain properties of photosensitive materials to treat cancer tumors. For example, there are materials that when you expose them to light become toxic. And so these materials are injected into cancer tumors, and then you will use special light to illuminate that part, and that helps to kill cancer tumors in quite an effective way. In many ways it has less side effects than traditional chemotherapy or radiotherapy. So it's again another approach to phototherapy. There are also therapies using ultraviolet light for different purposes, to help with vitamin D synthesis, another very important function of light. So as you can see, many different trends are happening. And in parallel with that, there's a whole world of therapies working with aspects of light that are not yet so well researched by the medical community, but that are still very significant. And often they connect with the techniques that have been used by ancient traditions. And so again, this is more specifically chromotherapy, working with the effects of colors. Colors can be used to touch people at a deep level in some forms of psychotherapy, for example. Well, light is a very special thing in our existence because it's both very physical, totally physical, like the whole energy on the planet comes from sunlight. We live materially from sunlight. And at the same time, we all know that light has this very non-material dimension. We've always associated light with the higher dimensions of being, like enlightenment and consciousness. Somehow we feel there's this link between light and consciousness. So it's quite surprising to see that the same reality of light both touches us so profoundly on the physical level and on the spiritual level. And so light is uniquely placed to establish a bridge between these two dimensions. And many modalities of light therapy work in that direction. They really use light as a bridge between the body and the mind and the spirit.
The area light and health is mainly the physiological reaction of light over the eye to the brain. So we are looking in brain science, so we are measuring signals in the body like EEG, electroencephalography, or other vital signs like visually evoked potentials, or also heart frequency variation.
Herbert Pliške je sveučilišni profesor iz Njemačke koji se bavi humanocentričkim osvjetljenjem prostora. Humanocentričkim osvjetljenjem se nadoknađuje ono što se gubi životom u zatvorenom prostoru. Jer kao što znamo, sunce je najbolji izvor svjetlosti, on je potpun, a svaka unutarnja svjetlost je nepotpuna.
If we have nature and we have outside light, we have a broad spectrum of frequencies or wavelengths. So in the inside, in the interior, we just have not that spectrum. We have mostly energy efficiency reasons to light up the rooms. So actually we need some more frequency and parts of the spectra and time it to certain times of the body. And this whole concept means, or is called human-centric lighting. So it's centered on the body, on the physiology, on the visual system, and on the non-visual system. Since the discovery of the iPRGCs, these intrinsic retinal ganglion cells, which are actually a photoreceptor in the eye, a new discovered photoreceptor in the eye, we know that there's a different spectrum which they need to react. And they react during the day, during the phase of blue light from the sun. They tell us, now it's day, to the body. The body sends out hormones, sends out activity signals from the brain to the body, from the body to the brain. So if it gets dark in the night, there's no more blue spectrum on the sky, in the natural light. And this tells our body over these iPRGCs that it's dark. And the switch has to be done from the light mode, from the day mode to the night mode. And this is very important for good sleep, for feeling good, for activity, for vigilance, for many factors which are controlled by sympathetic and parasympathetic systems in the body. And nowadays we are living mostly inside of rooms, and we have not the light from the outside. So we have no daylight in the rooms. We are partly working in the winter. We are going to work, it's dark. We are working in a dark environment. It's actually dark compared to the sunlight outside. And then we go at home and it's already dark. So the body does not get an appropriate signal to tell the body, now it's day. So we are tired during the day, we are not effective, we are in a mode of, the body does not know, is it sleeping time, or is it awake time? So what we need would be natural sunlight or artificial systems which create an ambient light which is similar to sunlight at special times. So we need the blue spectrum of the light during the day, and we have to avoid it during the night. Otherwise the body gets a signal, it's day, and the hormones gets distracted. Many manufacturers already producing systems in the field of human-centric lighting. They have special controlled LED lights mostly with a broad spectrum, and they have the ability to time it, especially also for different seasons. So actually what is coming in the technology right now, it's not that you go in a room and you switch on the light and it's always the same. So it's always different depending on your physiology. So you just switch on, it's the same, you don't have to do anything, but the light knows what time, what season, and probably in what state you are with your health iPhone and with other appliances. So this is probably the lighting of the future. The chromatic pupillometry right now is a research project, and by ourselves we developed an apparatus which can be used in clinical practices because it has to comply with certain regulations, and the medical technology is quite strict. So there is actually no application in the field right now. But maybe this will change in 5 to 10 years.
I came into Raphael Nouchet, who's working with colors and frequencies. And then I was just lightened up in a way. I thought it was amazing tools to use. So after this, or in 17 years now, I've been working with light and frequencies also.
Aneka Siversen dolazi iz Norveške i kroz sustav Teralight bavi se tretmanom ADHD-a.
I'm working very much with children. And with children, I use no needles at all, just light and frequencies. And what I see is that I'm working with ADHD, ADD, really difficult children. And when they get the light on, they really they change. The Teralight machine is an old machine. I have 4 of them, and I use them in every room I have. I put you on a bench, and then I put switch on special colors with special frequencies, or you can cross colors and frequencies. So I use very much red and green and magenta. That is the main colors I use for the children. The Teralight machine is a machine that you put colors on the top, and then you lie and bathing in colors with your body. So the photons are going into your body, and the cells are getting better, and they are communicating in a much better way. And also it is really important for the brain hemispheres, which I'm working very much on, to make them equal, to make them talk to each other in a good way. You have the Corpus Callosum, which is the bridge between the right and the left hemispheres. And they have 200 million axons binding them together. And for many of us, and also for children, they are not operating at the maximum level. So if you put some light on the brain and with special ear zones, and also in here, up here, you can make the hemispheres working very much better together. And very much of the children, they have really much noise in their head, and they can understand what you are saying, but they cannot get used of the message, because they forget words and they forget what you have been talking about. And that is because of the noise. And when you work with hemispheres, the noise is calming down really a lot, and they understand everything in another way. I think the Teralight is really a good communication tool to people. I use them on every patient I have, whatever they come of, and I think it has been used for so many years, and I've been using it for 17 years myself, so I know it very well, and I see that it makes a big difference on putting people on these colors and frequencies.
My particular interest is research and development of instrumentation, clinical assessments in things like of how visual stimulus affects the sensory systems, and working with development of instrumentation.
Jan Jordan nam dolazi iz Engleske i on se bavi lećama, znači razvio je leće pomoću kojih se poboljšava apsorpcija svjetlosti u ljudskom tijelu.
Around 30 years ago, a patient came into our practice. Said they'd heard about tinted lenses for dyslexia. Can we help them? That time I knew nothing about it. But we tried, and we eventually had some success. Shortly after that, we found other patients with similar effects. So reading problems we were starting to use tinted lenses for. I asked the professional bodies about this. They said they had no idea what to do. Would I do a research project for them? That started my particular interest. So for the last 30 years, I've been working with research and development of instrumentation in lens design and tint design, in the effects of tints. And there are a massive number of those. In fact, you can actually say it's probably like having a penicillin for medicine in the future. It is that big. For instance, we've done research into tinnitus, and we use a method called univariance, which basically means we separate the retinal cone cell pathways. We separate color in RGB very, very accurately. And by doing that properly, you can actually stop tinnitus in about 25% of patients. Pain, like migraines, for instance, will stop almost immediately in the vast majority of cases. No drugs, no side effects. Things like school education, things like autism, facial recognition problems, and sensory integration effects are actually governed by how you see, and particularly how you see colour. So we had to develop techniques to actually work within colour space very, very accurately, so we knew what we were doing. So we had UK government funding, and they funded, at least part-funded, instrumentation, and we developed instruments which can very, very accurately determine colour. Most people can't determine colour correctly at all. We can actually work in the range in colour space that a person can perform optimally. So once a person performs optimally, we then have to develop methods of working with that in different lighting conditions. So we have to work at filters that will work in different lighting conditions, and preferably one that will work in all lighting conditions, although that's often very difficult. We had developed new lenses, and we've now developed techniques for the non-expert to actually work with colour. And that will be coming out soon, and we've shown it for the first time here in Puli. This is a prototype for a new type of spectacle that's going to be used for people who with relatively little training. And so it's going to have about 2,000 colours, and there's going to be training incorporated in buying the initial pack. It's inexpensive, and it can be used by teachers, by people who are not going to pay a lot of money. So that one, lots of colours. On the other hand, this is an instrument that will do 16 million colours. And the 16 million colours will allow us to actually design the tint for a person with the spectacle prescription as well. So we can do this absolutely accurately, and it's the first machine in the world that can do this.
How is it used?
It's used in clinical situations. So you either do in optometry, in medicine, or psychology.
But do you sit, do you watch, what do you look at this?
Well, you can look at this one. This is a simple way of doing it, and you would look at the target, and the target itself is illuminated by different lighting. There's 320 lights in here, all very, very accurate, and it will give us 16 million colours. And we get the precise colour that a person sees best. Not only can we get the precise colour for them to see best, we can also see the tolerance range. We can then factor in the lighting, and we can design a lens from that, a tint from that. That's when you use colour at a very low level. When you use it at a high level, it's completely different. And the effects are totally measurable. We can do brain scans, and we have done them on children, and they're very predictable. And there's changes within the brain which you can actually measure. There's changes in multiple different measurements we can take, both optometric and in other measurements. And the clinical trials are coming. We've done a number of papers, but it still hasn't been researched to the level it should be. And sometimes when traditional medical techniques such as pain relief won't work, colour will. So it's something you should be looking at. For instance, we can often have a greater effect on pain than opiates without the side effects or the risks. We can actually do it in a number of different ways. We can either do spectacles, which we have some specialised lenses for that. We can do contact lenses. They're relatively expensive, and they're not a standard contact lens at all. Or we can change the lighting, or we can have combinations of them. Rarely would you want to do all three, but it does happen occasionally. Sometimes we need to do a different light on each eye. And for one of the effects of changing colour is that the change of processing speed in the brain, and that's measurable. And that's been well known, it's called the Pulfrish effect. If you change the colour, you change the processing speed of your vision. And when that changes in combination with your hearing, it means that your lip sync is achieved satisfactorily. So lip sync on television is almost a colour-related thing. If you change the colour, you can actually change the lip sync.
If we look at the term biogeometry and what it means,
It's breaking it down. We look at it as the study of the measuring of the earth and its effect on the body.
Dora Karim dolazi iz Egipta, ona se bavi utjecajem biogeometrije na ljudsku psihu, a to je način na koji boja uokvirena u određeni oblik utječe na ljudsku svijest i energiju.
Biogeometry started when my father, maybe, I can't say exactly how many years ago, before I was born, he inherited a body of work. He's an architect originally by profession, and he inherited a body of work that dealt with a radiesthesic system, not the dowsing that we know of, what's called physical radiesthesia. And this body of work allowed you to categorize and measure energies based on their effects. It got buried for some time because it has to do with the energy of shape. And one of the people from this body of work, he ended up harming himself by using the shapes incorrectly. But later on in his career, after graduating, when he was working as an architect, he went to France, and they gave him this body of work saying that it would be an ancient Egyptian who would be reviving this science. So at the time, my father was an architect, and he was not a medical doctor. And when he looked at this science, he was very much interested in, if we look at energy, and we look at it from a perspective of architecture and history of architecture, we see that there are types of energies in the earth that have shaped civilizations since ancient times. And these are the locations that we call power spots. They exist all throughout different civilizations, in different religions, in different spiritual practices. Places that people go to for healing, for oracles that have to do with specific rituals. And the interesting thing about the energy of these spaces is, for the first time, he realized that you had locations where you could benefit anybody regardless of the problem they had. He went out and started to look for, what is this energy? If we can find out this energy, if we can recreate it in our homes, it means that we can create a supportive energy environment for everybody. We actually call biogeometry nature's own design language, because the way biogeometry works is that we look at everything around us as vibrational information that affects our energy. So a part of that is color, a part of that is sound, but a part of that is also shape. Shape is part of, just like when we see a color, you can think of it affects your nervous system. A color can make you happy or sad, nervous or calm. It's the same thing with shapes. It's also something that you perceive and has an effect on your energy system. But specifically in biogeometry, we come back to that energy of a sacred power spot, where we say that when that code was found by my father for that energy of the sacred power spot, we call it the biogeometry 3 energy, because it's based on a measurement of 3 different color energies together. But the idea in biogeometry, we have something called the physics of quality, where we come in and we actually look at sound, color, shape, touch, taste as all being in resonance. So you might find, for example, some people talking about the resonance between a color and a sound. So do and the color red, or even a color and your chakras, your body. So how is this resonance possible? For this resonance to be possible, it means that at one level, at one vibrational level, they have to have the same type of information, the same type of effect on the body. And this is what we call the physics of quality. And when we understand this, it actually gives us a language so that we can design anything, shape anything, to produce the effect that we want. And so to give you a practical example, we have a lot of, my father being a professor of architecture, we get a lot of students who are actually able to do their masters and PhDs in biogeometry. He comes in as an additional supervising professor. But in the last, for example, the last PhD that was done was a student, her name was Lubna Sheker. And what she did is she was testing the effect of shapes for people who were recovering from depression or recovering from addiction. And so she designed a decorative strip based on biogeometry principles. And this was her thesis. And then at this point, you know, my father came back and he said, it's not enough. Kind of how you mentioned in the beginning that we want to make this more scientific. And he said it's not enough to just say that a design makes you feel something. We need testing.
So he took it to the medical department, and they actually tested the effects of the shapes on serotonin levels in mice. So you would have the depressed mice, and then you had the control, and then you had 2 different drugs and a drug combination, and then the biosignatures or biogeometry design. And the biogeometry design scored as equal to one of the combinations and better than the other 2. So this comes in where we're trying to show that the way that we shape and design our environment can actually be a form of preventative medicine. When we talk about shape, one of the things that I would like to mention or go back to, because I feel like this is maybe a common ground for everybody, is the Pyramids of Giza. So if we look at the pyramid shape, possibly the pyramid shape has been the most recreated shape used in healing. And the thing about the pyramid shape is, if you look at the shape of the pyramid, this is also true of the dome or hemisphere shape. These shapes amplify energy. They're energy emitters. Now, the problem is that we, in the healing world or in this healing community, they are aware of this effect. You can see this effect using various biofeedback devices. You can use it if you do any type of kinesiology or radiesthesia. But what they miss is that when you look at the pyramid shape, it's an amplification of energy. And people have been using it, but they are unaware of the energy they're amplifying. So what I mean is, if you go to the Giza pyramids, the biggest secret of the Giza pyramids isn't in the shape of the pyramids, it's in the location it's placed upon. So if you look at the Giza pyramids, it's placed on a power spot. So it goes back to that power spot energy that we spoke about. If you use the pyramid shape and you use it off of a power spot, then you could be amplifying energy, but you don't know what you're amplifying, which means that you could also be amplifying a negative effect. And if we actually look at the pyramid shape, most people, when they copy it as 4-sided, but the pyramid shape is actually 8-sided. In its base, you have small indentations, and these small indentations help amplify a beneficial energy quality in the environment. And if you do a 4-sided pyramid, you can actually produce a harmful shape. But what happened in history is people go into these pyramids and they feel a rush of energy, so they say that this is a very powerful shape. But they're not aware of these small differences between a 4-sided pyramid base and an 8-sided pyramid base that make it either detrimental to your energy system or beneficial. Also, if you look in architecture, the dome or the hemisphere shape is very similar to the pyramid shape in that it amplifies energy. But in architecture, the domes or the hemispheres are usually copied with their corrections, in the sense that if you look, the dome or hemisphere shape is almost always elongated or has something at the top of the dome, which helps amplify the beneficial aspects of this shape. But almost always as well, in sacred architecture, the dome and the hemisphere shape is placed over a power spot location so that they are aware of what they're amplifying. Two-dimensional forms have to be in resonance with the three-dimensional form in order to have that effect, the same effect. So I'll give you an example to explain what I mean. If you look at ancient Egyptian figures, reliefs on the temple walls, a lot of people describe them as being rigid, because the way that they draw these forms is they will draw them with the feet to the side, and then the chest forward, and the face to the side. So people didn't understand why they would draw it in this position. But you actually need this position in order to maintain the 2D image, to have a 3D, to be in resonance with the 3D human body. So we call this shape an archetype, because if you were to draw the feet forward, you lose information about the feet, and if you were to draw the face forward, you lose information about the nose and the openings of the eyes and the mouth. But if you draw it to the side, then you keep the information of the shape of the face, the shape of the feet. But if you were to draw the chest and body to the side, then you would lose the information of the chest and body. So this is why they would draw it in this way, is that ancient Egyptians were really very aware of how to preserve the 3D archetype, how to make it into a 2D form so that they can keep this same resonance. So in 2005, there was a cell tower installed in the town of Hamburg in Switzerland, and people started getting health effects. Some people actually had to live in underground bunkers, and the animals were also, with the cows, they were getting much more, the cows had to have a lot more abortions, they were getting a lot more problems. So at that time, the people contacted the government, and my father, he actually studied at ETH in Zurich. That's where he got his Doctor of Science and his PhD. So there was a friend who was in touch with the government who also knew about my father's work. So he contacted the local government, and he offered biogeometry as a solution to the local government, who contacted my father to come and try to solve the problem of the cell phone tower that the people wanted removed. Now, there was another aspect to this also, is that the cell phone tower was also installed in the church. And from looking at this from a community perspective, the church is the location where people are supposed to gather and connect as a community. But when you put the cell tower there and people start getting health problems, it's not only about the personal health problems, you're dividing up the community as a whole. So my father went in with biogeometry solutions. So when I say with biogeometry solutions, it's actually going in and installing shapes at the back of each cell phone antenna. And with these shapes, and the thing to understand is that when we look at the world around us, we're so used to looking at quantity. In terms of, we say, this is the cell phone frequency, and this is the effect that it can have on the body. But for example, they've already done studies where they've shown that the same frequency in a different wave shape has a different effect on the body. So we talk about, when we understand how we look at the world, we have to divide the quantitative effect and the qualitative effect. The quantitative effect is not always the same qualitatively. So it's exactly what the example I just gave of the same frequency, the same quantity in a different wave shape, they showed had a different effect on the body. So we come in and we work with shapes as a vibration in the environment, and we're able to change the quality of the emission from the cell phone tower. So the thing to understand about this, when people hear it, it's obviously a different worldview, but when we went into Switzerland, people were actually saying, we want the cell tower gone. They had no reason to support biogeometry as a solution, and they had no reason to stop asking for the cell tower to be removed. But about 1 week after we installed the shapes, there was a press conference held there. And they asked the people, what did what's happening? Did it work? And the people said, yes, we feel better. And this is a solution for us. And the big thing there also is, even when we went in, people said, we used what we call a quality of life scale. And this is the big thing about biogeometry, is we're saying we're not going in and solving one problem. We're not going in and solving a health problem. We're not going in and solving just the effect of the cell tower. Quality of life, if you look at the scale that we used, it involves everything that you can think of, from how you feel emotionally to sleep problems, to digestive problems, to just the complete quality of life. And we believe that by taking out the stress that the environment has on the body and supporting the body vibrationally, if you look at the research results, you see a graph where the graph isn't looking at each symptom separately, it's actually asking people, how many symptoms do you have? And you see a graph that basically looks like many symptoms as being the most common thing in the community, and then very few people having little symptoms. And then after the intervention, you see most people coming in and saying, I don't have symptoms, I'm healthy. Whether it's a headache, or whether it's an emotional problem, whether it's a digestive problem or a sleep problem. And this is what we call a quality of life scale. Now, I also have to add that the big thing in Switzerland is after this intervention in Hamburg, my father, Dr. Brahim Karim, gave a TED talk in Egypt, and it was called, Why is the Cow Smiling? And he explained that without the attention paid to the animals and the ecology of the environment in Switzerland, it would have all just been, a placebo effect. But because of the effect that they saw with the cows and the ecology, it was seen as a solution. And in fact, 1 or 2 years later, it was applied in another town of Switzerland called Hirschberg with the same results. To be able to define which forms are needed somewhere, then one needs to actually look at how we measure the shapes, how we develop the shapes, the effect of the shapes. So we do use a radiesthesic system where shapes, if you look at the old French radiesthesia system, there was already 2 researchers, Chaumery and de Belizal, who had studied and classified the effects of ancient Egyptian shapes and hieroglyphics based on their resonant colors. And that led to going back to finding that energy code of the 3 colors that you find in a power spot. But what this does is it allows you to actually study the effect of every single shape on the body And for us, it's to try to reproduce the centering effect of a power spot. The reason I say the centering effect is it goes back to that the power spot energy is probably the only energy in the world where you don't have a dosage effect. So what I mean by dosage effect is if you have any problem in your body, if you're using just a sound, a color, most people think I can't overdose on a color. But if you actually think about it logically, you could overdose on a color. In color therapy, if you have an organ that has a problem, and I give you too much of a color, and I push it into the other polarity, then I have to be with a practitioner who understands what they're doing, who can actually give me the right color. But if we're looking at the energy of a power spot, then I can expose you to this energy. You can go sit in a power spot, and I don't need to give you a time limit. I don't tell you this organ only needs 30 minutes in the power spot. But what I can tell you is the more you expose yourself to it, the healthier you become. So all of the shapes that we produce, all of the energy qualities that we try to add onto the emission of the tower, for example, is all to reproduce this energy. So when we look at this shape, the way that we do this is if you consider something like the pyramids, and we said that the pyramids, the biggest secret to them is actually the location that the pyramid shape is placed upon. So if you consider it, what we're trying to do is when you're starting to measure this energy quality, you can begin to look for it in shapes. And what's interesting is when you look for it in the human body, you find that this energy quality actually exists in your own body, and it's produced by the shape of your body. So in your own, we never spoke about chakras in biogeometry, for example, but what we found is when we study the effect of that archetypal image from ancient Egypt, and you begin to measure the locations in the body, in the shape of the body, that has that same energy of a power spot, it's those same locations that we've called the chakras. So what does that mean to us? It means that the chakras are also in resonance with this special energy quality of the earth. So this BG3 energy is your communication channel with your earth energy, with your own body, and or how, to say it a bit better, how your own body is in communication with the environment, in the sense that we say it's a window, because if you take, for example, a circle, and you look for this energy quality in a circle, you find it in the center. But what's interesting is that there actually is no center of a circle. So what that means is, imagine if I take a circle and then I ask you where's the center of the circle, and you point to the center of the circle, or you draw a dot. Now where's the center of the circle? It goes farther into your dot, or it becomes the center of the center. So a center of a shape is what we would call a wormhole or a vortex type of energy. So when we find this same wormhole or vortex type of energy in the earth, and we find it in your body, and we find it in shapes all around, it shows us that everything is in communication. And we try to keep all of these communication channels balanced or centered for the best effect on the body, and to balance the body's communication with the environment. So this is the goal of all the shapes, is to recreate the shapes that have this energy. Or the simplest way, you know, if we say, how do people know what shape that they can use? If you take a pyramid and it's 4-sided, that's not a shape you want to use. But if you take a pyramid and it's 8-sided, or you take your pyramid and you indent each of the sides, or you put a scratch down each side of your pyramid, 3/4 of the way through, then you start moving from that detrimental energy quality to that beneficial energy quality that you get from the Giza pyramids, for example.